Nearly every country in the world is in debt. As of November 2025, the United States owes more than $38 trillion, the highest figure in its history. The European Union carries roughly $14 trillion, and Japan nearly $9 trillion. Even nations like Saudi Arabia, rich in oil, or export powerhouses such as Germany and China, continue to shoulder surprisingly large amounts of debt. In short, the entire planet moves through a system wrapped in debt. But this naturally brings forward a fundamental question. If everyone is in debt, who exactly is owed? This is a story that sits at the crossroads of money, power, and history. And, as is often the case, the truth is far more layered than it first appears. Debt is not merely a burden. It is the architecture of the modern world. Every war, every crisis, every boom and collapse has risen upon this invisible framework of obligations. And when you trace the chain of credit far enough back, you encounter a reality that is unsettling yet illuminating. The world is not indebted to anyone in particular. The world is indebted to itself. Of course, this does not mean everyone benefits equally. Debt is born on history's stage. To understand the global mountain of debt, now exceeding $315 trillion, we must travel centuries back. The concept of national debt did not emerge in modern financial centers, but rather in the midst of war. In 1694, England was at war with France, and its treasury was rapidly running out of gold. The crown needed a solution, and that search led them to the powerful merchants of the time. In return for a stream of interest, payments secured by future taxes, these merchants agreed to finance the state. To manage this arrangement, the Bank of England was created. This was revolutionary. The state could now spend money it did not yet have, and lenders received something valuable, something that could be traded and sold, a promise from the government. Thus, the modern government bond was born. France adopted the model, the Netherlands refined it, and the newly formed United States used it to finance both its revolutionary struggle and its westward expansion. Empires once conquered land for gold. Today, they issue bonds for interest. The battlefield moved from physical frontiers to financial balance sheets. The world of debt today. 3 centuries later, debt has become one of the most circulated products on Earth. The U.S. owes $38 trillion, Japan over $9 trillion, and global debt grows by nearly $1 trillion every 100 days. Every nation borrows, every bank lends, and every citizen, through taxes, savings, and pension funds, is simultaneously a debtor and a creditor. So who holds the other end of the rope? Who holds America's debt? Of the United States' $38 trillion debt, roughly half is publicly held, owned by investors. About 2/3 of these investors are American banks, pension funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve. The remaining third is held by foreign nations. The largest holders are Japan, approximately $1 trillion, China, approximately $800 billion, followed by the United Kingdom, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So the dramatic claim that the U.S. owes a massive debt to China represents only about 2% of the total. The truth is that most of America's debt is owed to America itself, an interesting detail, to say the least. The Treasury issues bonds, banks and funds buy them. The Federal Reserve purchases them when needed, creating new money. The interest paid through taxes eventually flows back into American retirement accounts. It is in many ways a large system looping back onto itself. And this dynamic is not unique to the United States. It is the global pattern. The planet's interconnected IOU network. Japan finances the U.S. by buying treasury bonds. The U.S. lends to Europe through the IMF. Europe finances developing nations through the World Bank. Developing nations in turn reinvest their reserves into U.S. and European bonds, once again funding advanced economies. The world becomes a vast network of nations holding one another's promises. Every debt links to another. Every guarantee rests upon a different guarantee. and the system remains intact only so long as everyone continues to play. The real power: markets as silent arbiters. Behind every government bond lies a massive financial ecosystem: hedge funds, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, major banks, and of course central banks. These institutions quietly determine which countries borrow cheaply and which must pay dearly simply to survive. When confidence falters, currencies plunge, governments shake, and entire economies can be reshaped overnight. Democracy may decide who governs, but markets decide who endures. Central banks act as the system's modern regulators. When they purchase bonds, they create new money in the process. One balance sheet's liability becomes another's asset. Every unit of money in circulation originates as debt somewhere else. Debt-free money no longer exists. When the system cracks, we have seen the consequences of lost confidence. Greece 2010. When its debt became unsustainable, investors panicked and yields skyrocketed. Although the European Central Bank and IMF intervened, the resulting austerity left deep social wounds. Argentina. Repeated defaults made debt feel like a national curse. Sri Lanka. A shortage of foreign currency to service external debt led to fuel shortages and political collapse. During crises, the invisible creditors suddenly step into view: the IMF, ratings agencies, and anonymous bondholders. And once the dust settles, the cycle begins anew. Old debts are restructured, new loans issued, and the machine continues to turn. Governments never plan to pay their debt. They never do. In modern economies, governments do not aim to pay off their debt. This is not conspiracy, it is policy. Governments treat debt like a subscription that continually renews. New bonds are issued to pay off old ones. Economists call this refinancing. The true product is not principal. It is interest, the rent paid for financial stability. This rent is the global economy's steady breath. If the United States attempted to eliminate its debt, the financial system would collapse. Banks would lose their safest collateral. Money supply would contract. Deflation would set in. In essence, the presence of debt is part of the system's design. Therefore, governments increase debt in a measured rhythm rather than reduce it. Debt has become the heartbeat of global capitalism. The reality: we owe it to ourselves, but not equally. The idea that we owe the debt to ourselves is only partly true. Interest payments do not flow evenly through society. They tend to move from taxpayers to those who hold financial assets. This is why global indebtedness and inequality rise together. The system rewards those who own debt and pressures those who pay it. Final thoughts. Today, debt has become the currency of the modern world. Governments issue it, banks multiply it, investors trade it, and citizens build their lives within its boundaries. Debt once symbolized bondage. Today it represents balance. But if that balance ever breaks, if confidence fades, the true nature of debt becomes undeniable, a promise that cannot be sustained forever.